Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Grace and Truth, the official podcast of Grace Resurrection Methodist Church. This week, me, Camden McKinley, and my friend Mitchell Peck will be talking about audiovisual technology in this church and how we've been able to couple some of the old technology that was here when we moved in to the sanctuary over 2 years ago with some of the new technology that we've acquired thanks to the generosity of our church members and some of the donations that we've received. 3 years ago, when we moved into this beautiful sanctuary with its high ceilings and vintage wood, we never would have imagined that today we would be able to record services, live stream, and even start our own podcast. But thanks to the generosity of some of our church members who have donated AV equipment, we are able to do this, and we are so grateful that we have this new technology that we're able to use. So in this week's episode, Mitchell and I are going to talk about some of the funny, quirky things that we found going through this church and some of the tips and tricks that we have learned combining the old equipment with the new equipment. And so if you are a new church that is moving into an older building but still looking to keep up to date with AV technology, this is going to be the episode for you. Or if you're just interested in learning about some of the challenges we faced and some of the solutions that we came up with, then stay tuned for this episode of Grace and Truth. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Grace and Truth podcast, the official podcast of Grace Resurrection Methodist Church. My name is Camden McKinley, and this is my good friend,
Mitchell Peck.
We are AV technicians here at Grace Resurrection. I just graduated from high school, and I'm headed off to Clemson in the fall. How about you, Mitchell?
I just graduated from high school as well. I'm headed off to KSU in the fall.
Great. Well, today we are, as AV technicians, we're going to talk about AV, specifically in this church. And so our church building is a little bit old, and so we're going to talk about some of the challenges we faced and some of the workarounds as well. And so Mitchell, I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys a little bit of background about our building. So our building was built in the 1970s, I would say, pretty old, and our sanctuary seats about 370 people, and so it's not crazy small, not crazy big, but it's a nice building. It is. Yeah. And so, Mitchell, we're going to start off with some of the challenges we faced. And so, what would you say is the biggest technical challenge that you have faced working at Grace?
I'd say one of the biggest technical challenges that we face working at Grace is having to rely on a bunch of pre-existing wiring and equipment in order to accomplish new ideas and features that weren't envisioned when that equipment was put in place. For example, there's a stage box up in the front of the room that has 20-something inputs, and there's just a giant, thick cable that's run under the floor all the way back to the AV area, and it plugs into our mixing console. And the issue is half of the ports don't work. The box is at least 10 or 15 years old. We have no way how to fix anything with it, and so that's kind of an issue. Is we have to work around. All right, what ports do and don't work? What can and can't we add on to our current setup just based off of being able to get it to the mixer in the first place? That's definitely been a big issue. I think another one is our mixing, our production area is kind of relatively starting off from scratch. It was hard to. When everyone is standing in the congregation, we can't see the pastor or anyone else who needs to give us visual cues to say, we need to make sure to unmute them. And so it's kind of helping give us that ability to, okay, we need to have a stand or a box or something to stand on top of so that when the entire congregation of 370 people are standing, the production team is still able to see over their heads and see those visual cues that, hey, that person's about to start speaking. We should probably make sure they're unmuted so the congregation can hear them, and so it's caught on the recording, because that's a big thing is even if the congregation can hear them, the recording can't unless they're unmuted.
Yeah. Mitchell, how do the acoustics sound in that sanctuary? Has that been a good thing, or has that been a bad thing with this building being so old?
For the most part, I think the acoustics are actually pretty good, especially with the speaker placement. Obviously, with the sanctuary being almost 60 years old, the speakers that we have right now didn't come with the sanctuary. Grace recently had these speakers put in. There's two wide-angle speakers that are facing the majority of the congregation, and then there are also two narrow-range speakers for towards the front of the congregation, kind of on the sides of where the pastor might be speaking. And I think overall the acoustics are really good. Sound travels really well, and so, just this past Sunday, we actually didn't have a choir. We had 8 lovely ladies coming out and singing for us. And so part of the issue with that is they only sang one part of the service. They only sang for the anthem. And so for the hymns and for the offertory, anytime anyone was singing, we needed to be able to pick it up. And a great thing about the chamber is how the sound travels. And so we were actually able to use the existing choir mics without moving them to be able to capture the sound from the congregation, so that later in production with the YouTube video and podcast and any other channels, we're able to portray the sound that was given off by the congregation without having to add in any extra microphones.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the organ?
The organ.
Because that's something that a lot of modern churches today don't have.
Yeah, a lot of modern churches have definitely gone in favor of digital alternatives, like the Nord. So yeah, and not only does our church have an organ, it's actually an analog organ. So even relatively newer organs are digital, and so there's a way to plug into it to get a signal from the organ. With this organ, that is not the case. It is analog. It is wired directly to the blowers and into the pipes. And so a challenge we have there is, how do we pick up the sound coming from the pipes, but without picking up the sound coming from the blowers and without picking up the sound coming from the rest of the congregation? And so we used a certain microphone that allowed us to catch only the sound coming from above a certain level that we had it pointed at, that picked up all the sound from the pipes, which is the sound that we want. And because of where it is placed, it is not picking up the reverberation from the congregation making any noise that they're making. And it also doesn't pick up the blowers, which work pretty well. So we added that in a few months ago, and it's wired directly into the mixer, and it works great.
So Mitchell, off the top of your head, can you think of any compromises you've had to make on the audio side of things because of the age of our building?
Yes. So like I was mentioning earlier, one of the big issues is the existing stage box has a lot of faulty connections. And so that is a serious issue when we're having special events where there's extra instruments or extra singers in different places, and we need to be able to capture their voices and pick up their voices, and whether it's to throw back through the speakers into the congregation, or to throw into an overflow room like Michler Hall here, or to use on the podcast, we have to be able to use those inputs. And I think that's definitely causes some issues from the standpoint of, we almost have to triage, all right, what's the most important things that we need to be able to make sure that we have a recording of, that we're able to get the sound of, and pass on other things. And, sadly, that's the reality of where we're at right now. But with that being said, I think as an AV team, Camden and I, Andy, who's not here today, and Julia, who's helping us produce this right now, I think we do a great job about making those decisions, making sure that we get the best outcome possible, even in our current situation. And I think that's really awesome that we're still able to do that. All right, Camden. So, you run video. I run audio.
Yes.
You run video. Can you tell us a little bit about what that video setup is like?
Yeah, so here, our video setup, we have 3 PTZ, pan, tilt, and zoom cameras that we control from the desk. They're placed on the back, right and left side, and in the center of our sanctuary. And that runs into our ATEM controller, which we can switch between the different cameras. And that runs into a laptop where we record on OBS, and then we have the sound coming in and we edit it every Sunday. And that's our video system at the moment.
Awesome. If there were any, quick little upgrades or cool ideas you have about the video system, do you want to share those?
Yeah, I think the one cool thing we could do is an AI zoom autofocus on the pastor. So the PTZ cameras we have at the moment aren't able to do that. They're not able to make fine, smooth movements. And so we're not able to, as a lot of big churches do, have a camera that moves and follows the pastor around. We're not able to do that smoothly. It just doesn't, it looks jittery on the video. And so I think that would be really cool to do.
Okay, cool. What is the most creative or jerry-rigged solution you've came up with to anything that went wrong?
Yeah, so not necessarily jerry-rigged, but these past few Sundays, in the last couple months, we've been having issues with buzzing in our audio.
Yep.
And so we figured out that the problem was coming from running the sound from the console, the soundboard, into our video controller, and then running that into the laptop. And so we figured out it was the problem with the video controller. And so we're now running the sound directly from the soundboard to the laptop, and we're using an external audio interface to do that. And that is something that probably is different than what the board was intended for, but it works very well, as we found out. And so
it sounds great.
It does. It sounds great, and we overcame a really big issue doing that, and that's definitely a creative solution we came up with, right?
No buzz.
No buzz.
No buzz. Hey, now let's not bring it back. All right, and off of that, are there any hacks that have become standard?
Standard, yeah. I mean, definitely the audio interface. Mm-hmm. I would say also, right now we're using just like a foam box to stand on to be able to see over the congregation.
Yep.
Because our booth is like just in the back.
Yep.
on the floor, and that's okay, right? But I think the standing on the box, right, using the audio interface, these are things, right? The big mess of cables underneath the desk.
Yep.
These are things that are just standard for us, and that's okay because, right, this church is like kind of a startup, right? We kind of have that startup Kickstarter mentality,
Yep.
you know, and so we're finding solutions that work, right? And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, totally. Kind of off of your pile of cables under the desk. Obviously no one's walking under the desk, but something we have to be careful about is where people are walking. And one of the ways we kind of manage that is we have a lovely roll of brown
AV tape.
Yes, and sadly it's not gaffing tape. That would be beautiful. It'd also be beautifully expensive. It's just duct tape, and you know what? It works great. The carpet in the sanctuary is brown, and the tape is brown. And so if there's a run of cables that we need to cover or shield from certain healed people, we are able to. We're able to kind of make it blend in with the floor, and it also makes it so it's not a tangled mess that you can trip on and fall on and cause other issues. It's out of the way, out of sight, out of mind, and we are able to reliably know, hey, that is still working. That's not something that went wrong, and we're able to know, okay, where are these other failure points that we need to look at?
All right, so Mitchell, how does the age of the building affect team dynamic, right? We have a team here, right? It's me, Mitchell, Andy, and Julia, who's helping produce our podcast right now. Would you say we find ourselves troubleshooting more often because of our building here?
Yes, and part of it isn't even directly the building's fault. Part of it is the previous tenant's fault. We were left with some equipment, the stage box being one of them. But another one is a wall of amplifiers. And so there's a wall with a cabinet, and there's like 4 amplifiers in there, as well as an old mixing console that wasn't meant to be used live. It was just meant to be set and forgotten about, and an equalizer rack. And the mixer and the equalizer aren't used anymore because we have those at an actual mixer now. But the amplifiers have definitely caused some issues. They all essentially do the same thing. They take an audio input and amplify it and send it to speakers to then make sound. The issue is they're all different, and so that brings issues when I'm trying to make sure that the audio coming through Michael Hall is the same level that's coming through the nursery, that's the same level that's coming through in the hallway, because those are all fed by the same amp. I want those to be the same level as what is coming through on the choir mics, or the choir speakers, so that I'm then able to control the level from the console without having to worry about, oh shoot, is the amplifier that's hidden away actually making this way louder than it's supposed to be? And that's an issue because if I'm controlling a sound output thinking that one thing's happening, and really someone's up there sitting in the choir with their eardrums bleeding because the speaker is so darn loud that I don't even know it, that's not great. So there are definitely some issues that we kind of have to troubleshoot and work our way around. Obviously, I speak of that in the past, that issue that I just spoke about in the past tense, because we have fixed that. But I think a big part of it is, working with what we're given. Like Camden said, we're a startup. This church is a church, but it's also a startup. And a lot of that is working with what we have. And so that means being able to take the time and figure things out, and with whatever you have, make it work. And we've done a pretty good job about that. So I think what a lot of this sums up to is, really just things you should know if you are moving into an existing church and trying to run an AV team of any scale. And I think it really comes down to three things. The first one is with audio. Trace your audio backwards. Start at the speaker. Where's its signal coming from? All right, it's coming from the amp. Make sure the amps are set up correctly. Make sure they're all on. Make sure they're all set correctly. Then where do the amps get their signal from? They get it from the mixer. So make sure it's wired correctly. Make sure the mixer's outputting correctly. I think thing number two is probably video.
Yeah, making sure your cameras are set up every Sunday. And I know it gets repetitive and it gets annoying to check your cameras every single Sunday and make sure everything is absolutely perfect and set up, and making sure if you use PTZ, making sure your presets are all perfect and your white balance and everything is perfect. But it really does make a difference, and it really makes your own life easier.
Yeah.
And I would also, Mitchell, I know you want to talk about giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
And not overthinking it, not overdoing it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, any production you make, it's going to be great. Put in the effort, make it something you want to be proud of, but at the end of the day, it's going to turn out great regardless. You don't need to be stressing out or losing sleep or freaking out over something that happened the week before. Fix it, figure out why it happened, but give yourself grace. Things are going to happen, but regardless, it will turn out fine.
Yeah.
And so I think that brings us to our last point. Camden, have we ever had any issues that are the building's fault entirely that caused us to have a total AV breakdown?
I think that's a trick question. I think it's never fully the building's fault. But even if it was, that is not the end of the world, because we are not staying in this building forever. Our congregation is growing every Sunday rapidly, and we are at a point where we can't really fit in this building anymore. And so in a year, who knows where we're going to be, but it's probably not going to be in this building, right? Our staff is searching every single day, negotiating, looking for different properties, right? And so we are going to move to a bigger space, and hopefully a newer space as well. And when we do, our audio and our video should improve.
Explode. It's gonna be great.
And we have a lot of potential when we do that.
We're gonna have a Nord.
We'll see if the congregation approves of that, though.
Yeah.
We'll need to have a vote.
Hey, that's why there's traditional and contemporary.
Right. When we move to more services.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been amazing, talking
awesome.
about AV in this old building.
Yep.
And so we really hope you enjoyed it. This is the Grace and Truth podcast, the official podcast of Grace Resurrection Methodist Church. I'm Camden.
I'm Mitchell.
And we will see you guys next time.